Today we have a very exciting comparison between the Sony a6700 and the Fujifilm X-T5. And we're going to answer the question, is it time to switch to the Sony APS-C offering? Alright, so first things first, let's talk about the heart of these cameras, the sensor. The Sony a6700 sports a 26 megapixel Exmor-R BSI CMOS sensor paired with the latest Bianzi XR processor. On the other hand, we have the Fujifilm X-T5, which takes the lead with a 40.2 megapixel X-Trans CMOS 5 HR sensor. Now this sensor does not only boast higher resolution, but it also introduces the pixel shift, giving you an incredible 160 megapixel RAW file. So in terms of resolution, well, the Fujifilm X-T5 wins here. However, I would say that 26 megapixel is plenty enough, and this is actually what Fujifilm used to implement on their previous generation sensor. So Fujifilm wins, but Sony is not to be laughed at all here. Now moving on to ISO performance. Well, both cameras have their strength. The Sony a6700 covers a native ISO range of 100 to 32,000, while the Fujifilm X-T5 cover 125 to 12,800. But they both are able to push the limits for those low light situations. And if you compare the pictures that we took with both cameras at different ISO, well, you can see that the Sony a6700 seems to have a little bit less noise at higher ISO, while the Fujifilm X-T5 still has low noise. I mean, the pictures that you create are still very exploitable, but I would say that the Sony is slightly ahead in terms of high ISO performance. Now let's talk video. The Sony a6700 can capture 4K at up to 120 frames per second. However, the 4K 120 come with a crop, and 4K 30 and 4K 60 without a crop. Now the Fujifilm X-T5 is able to capture 6.2K 30 video and 4K 60 without any cropping. So both cameras have their strength. One offers 6K, the other 4K 120, so it really depends on what is your priority. Now let's talk autofocus. The Sony a6700 has a 759 phase detection points and 25 contrast points, while the X-T5 matches it with the same hybrid autofocus system as the XH2. So both offer impressive subject detection, as they're able to detect human, cars, airplanes, insects, animals. However, here I would say that the Sony a6700 is slightly ahead because it seems stickier and overall better at detecting the subjects. That doesn't mean that the X-T5 cannot get the job done, but in terms of percentage, what I found is that the Sony is usually better at autofocus. So if this is a deal breaker for you and that you want the absolutely best out there at this price range, then I would go with the Sony. Now in terms of burst rate, well, the Sony can shoot at up to 11 frames per second, while the X-T5 from Fuji can shoot at up to 20 frames per second. Now this is quite a big difference if you're trying to shoot fast-paced action. If you're trying to shoot fast-paced action for a short amount of time, then the X-T5 might be the camera that you want. However, it's important to notice that the Sony also has higher buffer, meaning that while you will not be able to shoot as many shoots within a second, you might be able to shoot for a longer duration. So if you're okay with the 11 frames per second for a longer duration, then go for the Sony. If you want that higher burst for shorter duration, then go with the Fuji. Now let's talk body and design. Well, both cameras have a completely different design, right? The Sony goes for that minimal, slick design, kind of modern look with a rangefinder kind of style. The X-T5s go for the classic Fuji design with the dials and that nostalgic feel. So this completely depends on what you're looking for. Personally, and that's only my opinion, I prefer the Fujifilm design because it's more visually appealing and I can see directly my settings on my camera without having to turning it on. But the minimum alloy of the Sony is also very attractive and very slick. So here, just pick one that you prefer, basically. Now, if we talk viewfinder and LCD, well, the Sony a6700 viewfinder offer smooth tracking with minimal lag, while the X-T5 packs more pixel and a higher magnification. When it comes to the LCD, well, the Fujifilm gives us a tilting 1.84 million dot screen, while the Sony a6700 is more of a fully articulated screen. So again, it depends on what you're looking for. Personally, I prefer, if I'm behind the camera, having the Fujifilm design. But if you're more into vlogging or if you want to see yourself at all time, then go for the fully articulated design. However, overall, I think that the quality of the viewfinder and the LCD is better on the Fujifilm, so I would give my point here to Fujifilm. Alright, so if you have shaky hands like me because you drank too much coffee, don't panic because both cameras come with IBIS. Both have a 5-axis in-body image stabilization, with the Sony offering up to 5 stops and the X-T5 impressively goes up to 7 stops of stabilization. So winner here is the X-T5 in terms of stabilization. Now if we talk SD cards, well, the Sony packs 1 SD card slot while the Fujifilm X-T5 packs 2. So if you, like me, have to cover some events or work for clients, that is not really a negotiable aspect to be able to shoot on 2 SD cards, because if one fails, it's good to have 2 and it's good to have that kind of safety net. So here, point to Fuji. In terms of battery life, well, that's a very important point, and the Sony a6700 promises around 700 shots, while the Fujifilm claims around 740 shots with the X-T5. So honestly, they are very comparable. So I would not choose one or the other with in terms of battery life here. Now, if we talk overheating, if you're into video, this Sony, from my experience and my tests, usually tend to give you a heat warning after 10 minutes of 4K 30. I don't have this on the X-T5 somehow. I can shoot longer, usually around 20-30 minutes without having any problems. So the overheating is kind of an issue on the Sony a6700. So for this particular aspect, I would say X-T5 for me is a better choice here. Okay, so as a conclusion, what I would say is that both cameras, I think, can do the job that they advertise properly. I would say though that what I don't like in the Sony is the single slot of SD card, the possible overheating. Also, something that I forgot to mention earlier was the absence of joystick in your camera if you want to control your focus point. And for all those reasons, I would still pick the X-T5 at the moment. I think that the X-T5 overall is a better camera. Of course, the Sony has a better autofocus system, I don't deny it, but I get the job done with this. And I still have my security net with my 2 SD card slots. I prefer the screen when I'm behind the camera. It's overall, for me, better quality. So yeah, I think that I would still pick the X-T5. Let me know down in the comment what you think about the comparison of those 2 cameras. Thank you for watching today's video. And if you've missed it, check out this video right here, where I talk a bit more about the X-T5 in depth. See you there.